If you're going to hunt a food plot this season, there's some great ways to hunt a food plot. In fact, I think there's 3 top ways to hunt a food plot, and there's a lot of wrong ways. I've discussed that in a lot of videos of why not to even plan a food plot. If you're going to spook deer because of that food plot, if you're going to overhunt that food plot, if you're going to set up a pattern that creates nocturnal deer use because of that food plot, then you're better off not having that food plot at all. But I've also found that there's 3 safe ways to hunt a food plot. Hunting a food plot can be incredibly fun, incredibly rewarding, and very successful. Now, I do believe when you're in low pressure states, Kansas, Kentucky, Iowa, for example, you can get away with a lot on a food plot. You can put a blind right out in the middle of a food plot. You can hunt those deer. You don't have to worry about spooking them as much. They're just not used to hunting pressure, used to those big boxes, used to those bad shapes out in a food plot, and you can get away with sitting on a food plot. It's very deceiving, of course. You watch a lot of the TV stars or on the outdoor channel, Sportsman's Channel, they're sitting out in a box blind shooting deer that you don't realize they haven't hunted out of that box blind other than 2 or 3 times that year, if at all. They have sometimes thousands of acres that they can put dozens of food plot and box blind combinations. They just don't have to overpressure them, and their neighbors aren't either because there's not a lot of hunting pressure. You can have states like Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin that combined have more hunters than the next 15 states down the list, with the exception of maybe Texas. And so you have a lot of hunters concentrated in small areas, and when you hunt out of box blinds, when you hunt out of food plots, you have to be very careful. And I've found 3 ways that you can successfully hunt out of a food plot this season and have very low probability of spooking deer. One way, big food plot right here, big expansive food plot. I can get in and out of this stand without spooking deer, and I can have deer literally at the camera and not spook deer. I come into this stand from downhill. My access is completely secure. I'm at the extreme edge of the food plot movement, meaning that I shouldn't have deer behind me. They're more in front of me, left to right. I can come in perpendicular to the stand location. My access into this stand right here is hidden. Just this hole I can shoot out. I can shoot out this hole right here, and there's a hole right here I can shoot. But when I'm walking up to this, I can actually climb in and out of this stand without spooking deer, and that makes this an opportune bow hunting site next to a big food plot, because I do not have to spook deer coming into this food plot. This food plot is expansive. This movement is expansive all the way back and forth here, and so I can easily get in and out. Imagine if you can get in and out of your tree stand location with 50 deer on the plot or 30 deer on the plot, then it's a successful reason and way to hunt that plot. That's number 1. Easy access to an extreme edge where your access and your climb into your stand or into the back of a hidden deer blind does not spook deer. 2, I love hunting box blinds off at a distance. So let's say this location right here was just a no-go for getting in and out of a bow stand. Well, hunting out of a gun stand that's hidden, whether it's hidden by a berm, hidden by Egyptian wheat, hidden by switchgrass, hidden by the lay of the land, then if you can get in and out of that stand location without spooking deer, and you can hunt from a distance with a gun or muzzleloader, then it's an opportune time. I see far too many people that stick that box right on the edge of the food so that every time they get in and out, they're spooking deer. That doesn't have to happen. You don't have to do it that way. When you're hunting with a gun, just back up a little ways, hide that blind, and if it passes the 100-yard test, meaning you can't see it from 100 yards or more, then that blind is hidden enough and it's effective to hunt that food plot. Those are 2 great reasons. 1, you're hunting that extreme edge. You can climb in and out of a stand location for bow. You're not spooking deer. 1 tip on that, if you have a mock scrape located nearby, that's a lot of reason for deer to come into your stand. I prefer a mock scrape over a mock rub, because rubs in the woods naturally are often only hit a couple times a year on average, especially those cruising type rub locations and line of travel rubs. And I don't think that's much different out in the food plot. On the other hand, we put mock scrapes on the edge of a food plot, and we'll get a picture of every buck that comes into that plot throughout the entire season. And then second, of course, you're hunting from a box, from a distance. And now 3rd, a way I like to hunt with a bow, Unfortunately, a lot of my food plots don't work out this way, but you're hunting a small food source or a line of food on the way to a major food source, a destination food source for the afternoon hunting. So that afternoon sit where you're hunting a pass-through plot, a true hunting plot that you can hunt with a bow. It's 1/10 of an acre, 1/5 of an acre, maybe 1/4 acre at most, and then those deer are all leaving and going to a major food source, often getting there between a half hour and an hour before dark. Those are some extremely nice setups. And even in the morning, I find that if there's bedding on the other side of a location like that, what a great sit for you to get into a small food plot like that where the deer are hundreds of yards away in the morning at daybreak, and then they're filtering down, especially a remote buck bedding location, and going through that pass-through plot. And you get a great look at those deer when they're just moving through, and they're not just sitting there until dark or sitting there for an hour at a time feeding because they have somewhere else they need to go. And it could be that it's on the way to a major ag field where those deer are safe and social at night. They're just hitting that little food plot of yours on the way through. But that has to be planned out. Your access has to be perpendicular. Your access still has to be hidden in and out of that plot. And I want to make sure I can still get to that small hunting plot without spooking deer. So 3 great ways to hunt a food plot this year. The risk is real, folks. If you're spooking deer off those plots continuously, you're better off not having the plot. I advise you to shrink it, move it, or just get rid of it altogether if that food plot is setting up failure for you before even the season begins. 3 great ways to hunt a plot. Hunt the extreme edge, maybe even add a mock scrape next to that extreme edge on a big plot. Hunt from a box blind from a distance that passes the 100-yard test, where you can't see that from 100 yards or more. You can get in and out without spooking deer. And then third, hunt a pass-through hunting plot that you can get in and out of that stand without spooking deer. The deer are passing through to a major destination or maybe even coming back to their bedding areas. It all boils down to, if you can't hunt that plot without spooking deer, then you're better off not hunting the plot, and in a lot of cases not even having that food plot, because why do you want to pull deer to a food plot that doesn't line up in any way with how you hunt it? If it lines up with that whole bedding to feeding movement and travel corridor, cruising area in the middle, then that's great. But make sure, I urge you this year, to really take a critical look at your food plot setups and your hunting setups. If you're spooking deer, changes need to be made, and these are 3 great ways that you can hunt a food plot this hunting season.